Kevin Martinez had been locked in the same room for 3 years. The walls were white and smooth. There were no windows. There were no pictures. The room had a bed, a toilet, and a sink. The crowd came every day with food and questions. They wanted to understand him. They wanted to know what made humans so dangerous. Kevin was not a soldier. He was not a killer. He was a mechanic from a small town called Denver on the planet Earth. The Krell captured him during their first meeting with humanity. They took him to their research station called Station Meridian. The station floated in space between the stars. Kevin had never seen anything like it. The walls were made of metal that seemed to glow from inside. The corridors went in all directions, some up and some down, though Kevin could never quite understand which was which. The lead scientist was named Dr. Krell. He was tall and thin. His skin was blue and covered with lines that moved when he talked. His eyes were large and black like the space outside the station. Dr. Krell asked Kevin the same questions every week. What made humans fight? Why did humans work together? What was the reason humans could not accept defeat? Kevin answered honestly, but he knew that Dr. Krell did not believe him. There were other humans on the station. Kevin had seen them sometimes when the Krell moved him to different rooms for tests. None of them looked at each other. The Krell kept them separated. The scientists wanted to study humans as if they were animals in a cage. And in many ways, that is what they were. 3 years is a long time to be in the same white room. Kevin had learned the pattern of the lights. The lights turned on at the same time every day. They turned off at the same time every night. Kevin counted the days by pressing a small mark on the wall with a piece of metal he had found. There were 1,095 marks on his wall. Then, on day 1,096, something changed. The station shook. Kevin was lying on his bed when the floor moved beneath him. He sat up quickly. The lights flickered. They went dark for a moment, then came back on. Then they went dark again. Kevin heard a sound from outside his room. It was loud and sharp. It sounded like metal breaking. The alarm started. It was a high sound that hurt his ears. Kevin stood up and moved to the door. The door was locked, as always. But Kevin had learned about the station. He had learned how things worked by listening. The door had a small panel next to it. When the power went down, the panel sometimes stopped working. The lights went dark again, and this time they did not come back on right away. Kevin moved to the door. He pushed on it. Nothing happened. But then the lights came back on, and the door made a sound. Kevin pushed again, and the door moved. It was not locked anymore. Kevin stepped into the corridor. He had not been outside his room without guards in 3 years. The corridor was empty. The alarm was still sounding. He could see smoke coming from somewhere down the hallway. He knew he should try to escape. This was his chance. This was what any human would do. But Kevin did not run toward the escape pods. He did not run toward the docking bay. Instead, his feet took him in a different direction. He walked through the corridors slowly, trying to stay quiet. He knew the station better than the Krell thought he did. He had listened to guards talking. He had learned the layout by the sound they made when they walked. He made his way to the residential section. This was where the Krell scientists lived. This was where they rested. Kevin knew that Dr. Petretta Valdez, the kind scientist who sometimes asked him questions about Earth, had an office here. She had told him that she studied his species because she wanted to understand, not because she wanted to hurt. Kevin reached her office. The door was open. The lights were still flashing with the alarm. He walked inside. There was a small room with a desk and books. But there was another room beyond that. It was a break room. There was a table. There was a small kitchen. And there was a chair. It was an old chair. It was covered in brown fabric that was soft and worn. It had arms made of wood. It looked like a chair from Earth. It looked like a chair from home. Kevin had not sat in a comfortable chair in 3 years. He had sat on his bed. He had sat on hard stools when the Krell did their tests. But he had never sat in a chair like this one. Kevin walked to the chair and sat down. The chair was next to a window. Through the window, Kevin could see the stars. He had not seen the stars in so long. He had not seen anything outside his white room except for the gray corridors of the station. He sat in the chair and looked out at the stars. His heart was still beating fast from fear. He knew the guards would come. He knew they would find him. But for a moment, he did not care. For a moment, he was not in a cage. For a moment, he was sitting in a real chair, looking at the stars, and he was not thinking about escape or fighting or survival. The footsteps came quickly. The guards came through the door with weapons in their hands. They were Krell soldiers. They were tall and strong. They pointed their weapons at Kevin's head. Kevin did not move. He did not stand up. He did not try to fight. Kevin simply sat in the chair, looking out at the stars, waiting for whatever would happen next. He had claimed something that was his own, even if only for a few moments. And nothing the Krell could do would take that away. Administrator Krell came through the door behind the soldiers. He looked at Kevin sitting in the chair. He looked at the stars outside the window. His black eyes showed confusion. This human had escaped his containment. He had the chance to run. He had the chance to try to get to an escape pod or the docking bay or any number of places where he might have survived. But instead, he was sitting in a chair. Administrator Krell did not give the order to fire. He simply stared at Kevin, trying to understand what he was seeing. And Kevin sat in the chair, finally feeling something he had not felt in 3 years, like he had made a choice that was his own. Kevin sat in a room that was different from his cell. This room had a table and 2 chairs. One chair was for Kevin. The other chair was for Administrator Krell. The walls here were not white. They were gray. There were lights on the ceiling that did not flicker. Everything was very clean and very cold. Kevin had been brought here after the guards took him from Dr. Valdez's office. They had not hurt him. They had not been rough with him. But they had not been kind either. They had simply taken him and brought him to this room. Now he sat and waited. Administrator Krell came in. He was carrying a device that showed pictures. The device was thin and flat, like a sheet of metal that was very smart. Krell sat down in the other chair and placed the device on the table between them. Krell looked at Kevin for a long time without speaking. His black eyes were cold and thinking. When he finally spoke, his voice was flat and hard. "Explain your actions," Krell said. Kevin did not know what to say. He had been expecting pain. He had been expecting anger. But Krell's voice held no anger. It held only confusion and a need to understand. "I do not understand what you want me to explain," Kevin said. Krell touched the device on the table. An image appeared. It showed the corridors of the station. It showed a path marked in red. The path came from Kevin's cell. It went through many corridors. It passed 3 different exits that led to the docking bay. It passed 2 exits that led to the escape pods. The path went only in one direction, toward Dr. Valdez's office. "You did not use any of these exits," Krell said. His voice was very flat. "You had multiple chances to reach the docking bay. You had multiple chances to reach the escape pods. You have knowledge of human fighter ships. You have knowledge of space travel. You could have escaped." "Yes," Kevin said. "But you did not escape," Krell said. "You went to Dr. Valdez's office instead. You entered her break room. You sat in a chair." Kevin did not answer. He did not know what to say. Krell touched the device again. Another image appeared. It showed Kevin in the chair. It showed him looking out the window at the stars. The image was clear and sharp. It was taken from a camera that Kevin had not known was there. "We have studied humans for 3 years," Krell said. "We have tested your strength. We have tested your intelligence. We have tested your ability to fight. We have tested your ability to work together. You are strong. You are smart. You can fight. You can work together. This is why we wanted to understand you. This is why we brought you here." Krell leaned forward. "We believed that when you escaped, you would try to reach a human ship. You would try to save yourself. This is what our models predicted. This is what your psychology training said you would do. But you did not do this. You did something that makes no sense. You sat in a chair. Explain this to me." Kevin looked at the picture of himself sitting in the chair. He looked at the stars behind him in the image. For a moment, he did not know how to explain what he had done. How could he tell Krell about what it meant to choose something? How could he explain the feeling of claiming something as his own? "The chair was mine," Kevin said finally. Krell made a sound. It was not a laugh. The Krell did not laugh the way humans did. It was a sound of confusion and frustration. "The chair belonged to Dr. Valdez's office," Krell said. "It was not yours. It belonged to the station. I sat in it," Kevin said. "I chose to sit in it. In my cell, I do not choose anything. Everything is decided for me. When I eat, when I sleep, when I wake up, when I stand, when I sit, everything is decided by you and your people. That chair was the first thing I have chosen to sit in for 3 years." Krell was silent. He stood up and walked to the wall. He touched something on the wall, and the lights became brighter. "In my cell, I have nothing," Kevin continued. "I have no books. I have no music. I have no pictures. I have no things that are mine." The chair smelled like coffee. It smelled like someone who works in an office. It was soft. It had been used by someone many times. It held memories. And when I sat in it, I felt like I was not in a cell. I felt like I was home. Krell turned back to Kevin. "Home is a location on your planet," Krell said. "Home is a geographic place. This is what your files say. This is what the data shows. The chair is not your home. The station is not your home. You are on a space station between the stars. Home is not a place," Kevin said. "Home is a feeling. Home is somewhere you can choose. Home is somewhere that belongs to you and that you belong to. For 3 years, I have had no home. For 3 years, I have had no choice. I chose to sit in that chair. I chose to look at the stars through that window. I chose to feel like I was something other than an animal in a cage." Krell was quiet for a very long time. He walked around the table slowly. He looked at Kevin's face. He was trying to understand something that did not fit into his understanding of humans. "You sacrificed escape for comfort," Krell said finally. "You sacrificed your freedom for a chair." "I sacrificed nothing," Kevin said. "I would not have escaped. You would have caught me. Your station is too big. Your people are too many. Your weapons are too strong. I would have run and died. Instead, I sat in the chair and chose my own fate. I chose to stay. No one chose that for me. I did." Krell walked to the door. Before he left, he stopped and turned back to Kevin. "This is why you are the most dangerous creature we have ever found," Krell said. "A creature that fights for survival is easy to predict. A creature that fights for a chair, for a choice, for dignity. This is much more difficult to predict. This is much more dangerous." He left the room and the door closed behind him. Kevin sat alone at the table, waiting for whatever would come next. But he knew something had changed. He had made Krell understand something about humans that no amount of testing could have shown. He had shown that humans were not weapons. Humans were something much more complicated than that. Humans were creatures that could find meaning in nothing, and that made them harder to. The message reached the Krell homeworld in 3 days. It traveled through space on a communication device that sent information faster than ships could fly. Administrator Krell had sent the recording of Kevin's interrogation to the High Council. He had sent all the information about what Kevin did when he escaped. He had sent a question that he could not answer himself. On the homeworld, the philosophers and military leaders watched the recording. They watched Kevin sit in the chair. They watched his face when he looked at the stars. They listened to his words about home and choice and dignity. Then they began to argue. The military commanders said this was a serious problem. If humans would not try to escape, even when they had the chance, then humans were unpredictable. If humans cared more about psychological comfort than survival, then humans could not be controlled by fear. Fear is what the military commanders understood. Fear is what kept soldiers in line. But if humans could ignore fear for the sake of choosing something small like a chair, then they were dangerous in a way that no amount of weapons could stop. The philosophers were even more troubled. Dr. Wren, the oldest and wisest of the philosophers, wrote a long message to the High Council. In this message, he said that humans had shown something that no other species in the galaxy had shown before. Humans could create meaning from nothing. Other species needed resources. Other species needed power. Other species needed territory and weapons and ships. But humans seemed to need something that could not be taken or given by force. Humans needed to choose. If a creature values choice above safety, Dr. Wren wrote, then we cannot control that creature with weapons. If a creature values dignity above survival, then we cannot control that creature with threats. If a creature can find home in a chair on a space station, then that creature can find home anywhere. And a creature that can be at home anywhere cannot be contained. The weapons developers met in secret. They looked at what they thought they knew about humans. For years, they had believed that humans were strong and violent. They had believed that humans were perfect soldiers because humans enjoyed fighting. They had believed that humans would be valuable to the Krell Empire because they could be weapons. But now they had seen something different. They had seen a human sit in a chair instead of fighting. They had seen a human care about comfort and dignity. They had seen a human find meaning in the smallest things. One of the weapons developers, named Vex, said something that made everyone stop talking. What if everything we know about humans is wrong? Vex said, what if they do not become stronger when they are threatened? What if they become stronger when they are free to choose? What if they fight harder when they are fighting for ideas instead of for survival? The generals did not like this idea. The generals wanted to believe that humans were weapons that could be pointed at enemies. But Vex's question made them think. Back on Station Meridian, things were changing. Dr. Patricia Valdez had been given permission to study Kevin without the restrictions that had been in place before. She could ask him questions without guards listening. She could spend time in his room without scientists recording everything. Dr. Valdez brought Kevin books. She brought him art from Earth. She brought him music that humans had created. Kevin cried when he heard human music for the first time in 3 years. He held the books in his hands like they were precious things. He looked at the art and remembered Earth. Why are they allowing this? Kevin asked Dr. Valdez one day. Because, Dr. Valdez said, they are starting to understand you. They are starting to understand that humans are not what they thought you were. They thought you were simple. They thought you were just soldiers. But you showed them something different. I just sat in a chair, Kevin said. You did more than that, Dr. Valdez said. You showed them that humans have something inside that cannot be broken. You have hope. You have the ability to find beauty and meaning in small things. You have the ability to claim home and dignity, even when everything has been taken from you. That is very dangerous to an empire that rules through control and fear. Dr. Valdez told Kevin about the arguments on the homeworld. She told him about the philosophers who thought humans were a danger. She told him about the generals who did not know what to do. She told him that Kevin's simple act of sitting in a chair had created a problem that no weapons could solve. They are afraid of you now, Dr. Valdez said. Not because you are strong or because you are a good fighter. They are afraid of you because you showed them that humans cannot be controlled. You cannot control something that does not need your approval to be happy. You cannot control something that can find home anywhere. Other humans arrived on the station during this time. They were military people and engineers and scientists. They came to be studied like Kevin had been studied. But something was different now. The scientists treated them differently. They were given better food. They were given more space. They were allowed to talk to each other. Kevin would sit with these humans in the break room on his breaks. They would sit in chairs and talk about Earth. They would talk about their families and their lives. And Kevin would tell them about the chair that had changed everything. One day, a young human named Lucas asked Kevin, "Do you regret it? Do you regret not trying to escape?" Kevin looked at the chair. He looked out the window at the stars. "No," he said, "I do not regret it. Because in that moment, when I chose to sit in this chair instead of run, I made myself something that the Krell cannot break. I made myself free. No ship can make me free. No weapon can make me free. But choosing something as my own, claiming dignity, choosing to feel at home. That is real freedom. That is the kind of freedom that an empire cannot take away." And Lucas understood. And the other humans understood. They began to sit in chairs. They began to create small homes in the rooms where they stayed. They began to claim things as their own. They began to show the Krell Empire something that terrified the Empire more than any human army could dot. They showed them that humans could not be broken. On the homeworld, the High Council received report after report of human behavior. Humans claiming spaces. Humans creating beauty. Humans finding meaning in nothing. The generals wanted to end the research. They wanted to send the humans away. But the philosophers wanted to know more. The philosophers knew something that the generals did not. They knew that they had discovered something about their own species. The Krell had become so focused on power and control that they had forgotten what it meant to choose. They had forgotten what it meant to create home. And now they were looking at humans and seeing something they had lost long ago. And that realization, more than anything else, made the humans the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. Administrator Krell was removed from Station Meridian. A new commander arrived. Her name was Commander Vuss. She was younger than Krell, and she carried orders from the High Council. The orders were simple but unclear. All human research was to be stopped. All humans were to be kept in their cells. All previous freedoms were to be removed. Dr. Patricia Valdez read the order and felt something break inside her. She had finally begun to understand Kevin and the other humans. She had finally seen the truth about them. They were not weapons. They were creatures of beauty and meaning. And now she had to put them back in cells. But something strange happened. When the new order was given, Kevin's chair was never removed from his cell. "Commander." Voss came to Kevin's cell herself to give him the news that he would be returned to isolation. She looked at the chair sitting by the window. She looked at Kevin sitting in that chair. And she did not order the chair to be taken away. Valdez asked her about it later. "Why did you leave the chair?" Valdez asked. Voss looked at Valdez for a long moment. "Because Commander Krell left it there," Voss said finally. "And I will not be the one to take it away. Some things are too important to remove." It was a small act of mercy. But in that moment, Valdez understood something. Not all of the Krell were the same. Some of them understood what humans had shown them. Some of them had been changed by seeing Kevin sit in that chair and look out at the stars. Kevin was alone in his cell again, but he had the chair. Other humans were isolated again, but they had small things that they had claimed. A blanket, a drawing, a piece of metal shaped like something beautiful. The Krell had not taken these things away. The Krell had left them. Weeks passed. Kevin sat in his chair every day. He looked out at the stars. He did not try to escape. He did not try to fight. He simply sat and waited. And while he waited, he thought about Earth. He thought about Denver. He thought about the small apartment where he lived. He thought about the cheap chair in his living room where he used to sit and watch the sun go down. This chair was different from that chair, but it was also the same. It was a place where he could sit and be himself. It was a place where he could choose to look at something beautiful. Valdez came to his cell one day. She brought a small device. It was a communication device that could send messages, but it was not connected to the station. It was a hidden device. She pressed it into Kevin's hand. "I cannot help you escape," Valdez said, "but I can help you speak. This device can send messages to Earth. It can send them in a way that the Krell will not detect. Send a message to your people. Tell them what happened here. Tell them about the chair." Kevin held the device in his hand. He looked at Valdez's face. She was risking her position. She was risking her safety by giving him this device. "Why are you doing this?" Kevin asked. "Because you are right," Valdez said. "Because humans are not what we thought. And because the Krell need to know that. Your people need to know that we are trying to understand you. The High Council needs to know that some of us see the truth." Kevin used the device to send a message to Earth. He told the human government what had happened. He told them about the research station and the Krell Empire. He told them about the 3 years in the White Cell. But mostly, he told them about the chair. He told them that the Krell had learned something about humans that humans needed to remember, about themselves. He told them that humans could not be broken because humans could find home anywhere. He told them that the most dangerous thing about humanity was not strength or weapons. It was the ability to claim dignity and meaning even in the worst circumstances. The message took weeks to reach Earth. When it arrived, it changed everything. The human government released Kevin's message to all humans. They showed the recording of Kevin sitting in the chair. They showed the interrogation with Administrator Krell. They showed what humans had done on the station. They showed how humans had begun to create beauty and meaning in a place designed to break them. Humans were united in a way they had never been before. They were not united by fear of the Krell. They were united by pride in what Kevin had shown them. They were united by understanding that they had something that could never be taken or broken. Months passed on Station Meridian. New humans came to be studied. They came knowing what Kevin had done. They came knowing that they had something inside that could not be controlled. They came with chairs and blankets and drawings. They came with music and hope and the absolute knowledge that they would not be broken. The Krell watched all of this. The scientists watched. The guards watched. The commanders watched. And slowly, they began to understand. They understood that they could not study humans the way they studied other things. They understood that they could not predict humans. They understood that humans were not weapons or tools or things to be. Understood through tests and recordings. Humans were creatures that could find home. In a chair on a space station orbiting between the stars, Valdez was with Kevin in his cell one day when the communication came through. The High Council had made a decision. All human research was to be stopped permanently. All humans on the station were to be released. All humans were to be returned to their homeworld. Kevin stood up from his chair when he heard the news. He looked at the chair. It had been his home for so long. It was just a chair. It was just an old piece of furniture covered in brown fabric. But it was the thing that had changed history. "I want to take it," Kevin said to Valdez. "I want to take the chair with me." Valdez smiled. "I know you do," she said. "And I will make sure you do. A chair this important should not be left behind." 2 days later, Kevin boarded a human ship that had come from Earth. The chair was placed carefully in the cargo hold. Kevin sat in a normal seat on the ship and looked out the window at the stars. He thought about going home. He thought about seeing Earth again. He thought about sitting in that cheap chair in his apartment in Denver and watching the sun go down. But he also thought about the Krell. He thought about Administrator Krell. He thought about Dr. Valdez. He thought about all the things they had learned from a human who chose to sit in a chair instead of fighting Dodd as the ship pulled away from Station Meridian. Kevin pressed his hand against the window. The stars were bright and clear. Somewhere down there, the Krell Empire was learning a lesson that would change their world forever. Humans could not be broken. And now they knew it too. 5 years after Kevin left Station Meridian, the Krell Empire sent a message to Earth. They wanted to have peace talks. They wanted to establish trade and alliance. They wanted to learn from humans. The human government was surprised. They had expected conflict. They had expected war. But instead, they received an invitation to negotiate. The human delegation was made up of strong people: military leaders, scientists, diplomats, and politicians. They came to represent Earth and the human colonies that had been established on other worlds. Kevin was not part of the delegation, but he was there as a special advisor. He was the human who had been studied. He was the human who had sat in the chair. The Krell delegation came to Earth for the first time. They came to the United Nations building in New York. They came to meet with humans on human ground. They had weapons, of course, but they also came with a strange kind of respect. Administrator Krell was the head of the Krell delegation. He was older now. He had been removed from his position at Station Meridian, but he had been given an important job on the High Council. He was the ambassador for human relations. He had spent 5 years studying humans and understanding them. When Krell saw Kevin in the conference room, he stopped and looked at him for a long moment. "You look different," Krell said. "I am home," Kevin replied. "That changes a person." The talks began. The human diplomats were strong and confident. They negotiated from a position of knowledge. They knew what the Krell had learned from studying humans. They knew that the Krell had come to understand that humans could not be controlled by force or fear. They used this knowledge carefully in every negotiation. The Krell could not intimidate humans with weapons because humans had shown them that humans valued things more important than survival. The Krell could not use fear as a tool because humans had shown them that humans could find meaning and dignity even in the darkest circumstances. The Krell could not use power as a pressure point because humans understood that power was not the only kind of strength. When the humans asked for something, they asked with confidence. When the Krell offered something, they offered it with respect. By the end of the talks, the two species had created a treaty. It was a treaty based not on fear or power, but on understanding and respect. Ambassador Krell approached Kevin at the end of the final day. "You did something remarkable," Krell said. "Something that we did not expect. Something that changed our entire understanding of civilization." "I sat in the chair," Kevin said. "You did more than that," Krell said. "You showed us that the most dangerous creature in the galaxy is not the one with the strongest weapons or the fastest ships. The most dangerous creature is the one that cannot be controlled. You cannot control something that does not need your approval to find meaning. You cannot control something that can build home anywhere. You cannot control something that values dignity above survival. Kevin nodded. He understood what Krell was saying. He had always known it, but it was good to hear it said by someone from the Krell Empire after the peace talks ended. Kevin returned to his life. He left the government advisory position. He returned to his work as a mechanic. He bought a small apartment with a window that looked out at the mountains, and he placed a chair by that window. It was a replica of the old chair from Station Meridian. It was the same color. It was the same shape. It had the same warm quality that came from being used and loved. Kevin sat in that chair every evening and looked out at the mountains and thought about his journey. He thought about the white cell. He thought about the day he escaped and chose a chair instead of freedom. He thought about Dr. Patricia Valdez and her quiet acts of kindness. He thought about Administrator Krell and the slow change that happened in the Krell Empire because of his choice. He thought about how something as simple as choosing where to sit had changed the course of history. Years passed. Kevin grew older. The chair aged with him. The fabric became more worn. The wood became more weathered. But Kevin kept it. He sat in it every day, and he told people about its history. He told them about Station Meridian and the Krell, and what it meant to claim home and dignity. Kevin became famous. Not because he was a hero or a warrior. He became famous because he showed humanity something about itself. He showed humanity that the greatest strength was not the ability to fight. The greatest strength was the ability to find meaning and home, even in the worst circumstances. Young humans would come to his apartment and ask to sit in the chair. They wanted to feel what Kevin had felt when he sat in it on Station Meridian. They wanted to understand what had made them so dangerous to the Krell Empire. It is not the chair that is important, Kevin would tell them. Any chair will do. What is important is that you choose it. What is important is that you claim something as your own. What is important is that you understand that no one, nothing, no force in the universe can take away your ability to find home and dignity and meaning. The Krell historians studied Kevin for the rest of his life. They came to his home and recorded his words. They wanted to understand the moment when a human changed the galaxy by sitting in a chair. They wanted to understand the psychology that made humans so different from every other species they had encountered, but they could never fully explain it. Because what Kevin had done was not something that could be explained through science or data or tests and measurements. What Kevin had done was something that came from the human spirit. It came from the human ability to find hope and meaning and home in the smallest things. It came from the human refusal to be broken. When Kevin died many years later, his chair was placed in a museum. It was called the Chair of Sovereignty. The sign next to it told the story of a human who chose dignity over survival. A human who chose to sit in a chair instead of run from his captors. A human who showed the entire galaxy that humans were not what anyone expected. The Krell came to see the chair. They looked at it with something like sadness and something like wonder. They had built an empire on power and control. But they had learned from a human sitting in a chair that power and control were not the greatest things. Freedom was the greatest thing. And freedom could not be given by force or taken by force. Freedom had to be chosen. Freedom had to be claimed. And in the end, that is what made humans the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. Not because they were strong or violent or fearless, but because they could not be broken, because they could not be controlled, because they could find home and meaning and dignity anywhere at all. And that was something no weapon or empire could ever change.